our site. Go figure, you build something brand new. It rains really hard in Florida. If your grasses haven't grown in very well, things start to erode. So I am in the process of discussing with a couple I'm trying to get 2 consulting firms to work together with me to help fix this little eroding berm that we have that goes between our salt marsh area and that pond. So far, everybody's on good talking terms. So this is also a potential for an intern possibility, because once we get the living shoreline put in, my goal is to have different examples of a living shoreline, as well as a mini seawall, so that an intern can come in and monitor what is utilizing a seawall versus mangrove versus riprap versus marsh grasses, so that should someday you be fortunate enough to live on the water, you can show that, hey, you know what, you don't have to pour a concrete seawall outside your home. There are alternatives that will also provide you that same shoreline stabilization. So second potential project, not funded yet, but we're getting there. But this one, there's Ashley's quote, is currently at our site in Apollo Beach. So she's just like, you do this part, you're here. So I stole this, I gave her quotes, I put her name. See, thank goodness for that. She's sitting in the room as a graduate of this college. So she decided, and I still can't believe it, that no one had thought of this before. Not to discredit Ashley's thinking capability. I was just in shock that this was a new idea. So these biodigesters are a way to use anaerobic bacteria systems to break down food waste and have clean energy sources, clean biogas in terms of methane production. And then the byproduct is fertilizer that you can actually use to help grow things. But most of these systems in the past have used fresh water. Well, fresh water is so scarce that Ashley said, well, I don't know how it came about in class one day between conversations of people in this room, like, why can't you do that with salt water? And so she came back and she's like, do you think we could set this up here? And so here is one of the 2 saltwater and brackish water biodigesters that Ashley and co-students of hers from this college put into place at Apollo Beach, and lo and behold, it worked. It is a success story, and she's been getting a lot of attention. She has a new job in Oldsmar as a graduate of this program, and things are working and expanding. Now here's my plug. This exists in Apollo Beach. So if any students or students that are friends of yours who are not here, who are looking for internship possibilities, I have very limited staff. So if we would like to keep these really cool saltwater, brackish water biodigesters running, this could provide a good opportunity for students to come, have an internship, maybe come up with some objectives of your own to add to it, to come off with spinning off a project. At the very least, you will learn the value of having to monitor data, how to fix things when they don't work anymore, to be sure that you're following protocols and keeping it the same between 2 different systems in an experimental design. And so if we don't get the help to keep these going and running, it would be a shame to lose this renewable energy source that a student over here came up with. Would you like to add anything as a good plug, fellow or former classmates?
You want to help, come talk to me, because I am looking right now for, I'm actually doing training with one other person at the moment, so if you do want to join it, this is a great time, because I am starting up a training on the biodigesters now, and we're doing data measurements, and yeah, if you like summer camp, we're doing summer camp.
Everybody likes camp. Did anybody in here ever go work camp? Come on. So yeah, I'm sorry, was that an okay plug?
It's a great plug.
Okay. It's true,
We'd
it's
love
serious.
to do the big ones like we have at Fat Meat Farm, and that we're proposing for Dunedin. out at Apollo Beach with Tico and new stuff.
I have it in my
Seniors
pocket.
working on the big one in Oldsmar, and you're now in Oldsmar. If we can bring people from Apollo Beach to Oldsmar to see the one that we have there, and then we'll go, wow, but we could do a saltwater one at Apollo Beach because we have a freshwater one at Oldsmar.
Prove that works. See? You come to a university and ideas start spinning around. And of course, volunteers. We are short-staffed, so nothing can happen. It doesn't matter if you're with TICO, if you're with the Florida Aquarium, or with your FWC. The site has a lot of support from volunteers in the area. We had 4 high school students last year, just 4 high school students from a school right around the corner came and put in 100 hours of service over the summer. In the last 2 years, 203 people have put in 2,700 hours. If you divide that by 40, that's a lot of weeks of a full-time employee. So I am in debt of gratitude to the volunteers who are willing to come out to Apollo Beach and help out. So, oh look, and there it is, June 15th, when the very first piece of equipment showed up and the silt fence went in. To go from that to our youth center today, we had our very first public open house in January 2017. Here we are 2 years later, and we will easily, if we stay on track, we should have served 20,000 youth by the end of this calendar year. We have already surpassed 20,000 visitors if you add in all the adults and programming and workshops and trainings that we have done at the site. So in a very short amount of time, this really cool public-private partnership has produced some really amazing things for the Bay Area. I'm a big proponent of the Florida Conservation and Technology Center. And so maybe some of you guys will think about coming by as college students to work on honing some of these other leadership skills that you can get by participating in parts and programs and pieces that we have to offer. So it's not just for those 3rd through 12th graders, but it can also be for undergrads and graduate students as well. So thanks for coming to listen. I'd love to answer any questions, your ideas. Something, nothing, I get it. Blank looks. I was getting a lot of smirks from this guy. I'd like to know what was going through his head. He's probably just laughing at me. It's all good, I get it. Yes, sir.
Now, with the field trips, do you know if it's public schools or private schools that are doing the field trips more?
More?
Yeah.
Well, this year I can tell you for a fact it's more public schools because some of the grants that I obtained this year, the hard part with Hillsborough County is it's very expensive for a teacher to bring a school group out for a field trip. Now, I didn't even know this, but I guess the rules changed last year where a substitute, or if a teacher takes a class on a field trip, the teacher has to pay for the substitute and take a sick day just to go themselves. So that's a hefty price tag. And then if you rely on the school district busing, because there's so many kids in the Hillsborough County School District for public schools, and the elementary school kids are going to school at like 7:15 in the morning, but then they're getting picked up at 1 or 1:30. So for the high schools that only start at like 9 or 9:30, they have to turn around if the bus that was going to drop them off has to go pick up elementary school kids to take them home at 1. So they're very limited in the time. So when I wrote grants for this year's programming, I wanted to be sure I was covering bus transportation so that we could rent an independent bus company so that the field trips can actually stay for a 4-hour block of time and have the time to do something and learn something and really get hands-on with it. And then I also added in some extra money to pay for a substitute teacher so that the teacher didn't have to worry about that expense either. So this year, because of that, it's been mostly public schools. Last year, it was probably a really good mix between public, private, charter, homeschools. And also, it's not just schools. It could also be like a scout troop or 4-H club. We have them visit as well. So. And I actually just totaled those numbers for a grant report I actually had to do. And I think last 2018, just calendar year, so a mix of academic years, but it was about It was about 9 high schools, 9 middle schools, and then maybe 15 elementary schools. So more on the younger side, but we have the programs also for the older students. And because of my research background, we're trying, for the older kids that are coming, like 11th to 12th grade, a lot of times the electives in the high schools is when they can start to take marine science or environmental education or advanced AP biology. So with those programs, I'm trying to take some of the work that we did in the monitoring programs and the research programs that I'm coming from and using those field techniques to come up with techniques that those kids can do and use. And then at the end, they've collected their data. Then they can either, if there's time, do it on site, or they can take the data back to the class and then do the follow-up work to either generate the models or calculate the abundances or looking at the community ecology indices and things like that. So we try and make it age appropriate, and we do match them to the Florida standards. So if a school principal or a teacher needs to know, can I really take my kid on a field trip if they're just gonna go fishing? Then I can show, no, look, here's the other things that we're gonna cover, and these are all the standards that it will match for your 7th graders. So we're getting a good buy-in. We have a pretty good partnership, I think, with the Hillsborough County School District. But we've actually had visitors from 7 different counties in the Bay Area, and south and north, because I don't really consider like Sarasota and Charlotte County are getting kind of far away, but a couple of them have made the trek. No question. Just one. There we go.
So after finishing the application of the treatment, how do you release seed samples? Do you release seed samples?
So we haven't released any yet because we just received the first, what would you call them, they're injured animals. We just got the first ones in. But once they go, I mean, there's a standard set of protocols that they will follow to make sure that the animals are healthy, and then they'll go in that tank, make sure they're still able to dive and feed as they normally would do in the wild. But most of the releases that I have seen or heard about, they would just load the animals up and in the tanks and take them out and put them back out into the bay. Or the area that they came from, I should say. They're not gonna just randomly put a turtle right outside if it came up from the Keys or something. Did that answer your question? Okay. You're welcome. I still have 15 minutes. That's unheard of.
I think you, based on our conversation earlier, to what extent do you see Apollo Beach being the place where Patel students can create a cycle of research activities in all domains of our college? So if students are doing food security, or they're doing water, or they're doing waste, or they're doing energy, can one rely on Apollo Beach being one of the locations where iterations of students can keep coming and put into practice field research?
I would think so. I am one person of one agency. Florida Aquarium and Tampa Electric Company also have to share that mindset. The facilities are there, and the future is, so we have this 3-way partnership, right? And I talked to you about University of Florida. So there is actually a memo of understanding in place with the University of Florida that says they will have a presence there, they will have students there, they will be doing work there. If it was coming at it from a research perspective with projects like that, then they may say, hey, let's put together a memo of understanding with Cal College Global Sustainability. Or if it's just project to project or internship type stuff, then it's just a matter of having someone like myself who is willing to work with the students to do what the university requires for an internship to be considered complete. And then at WC, we have our own couple of little requirements where it's like so many hours a week. If it's at our site and it's something that you're doing that could then be matched to sort of like a lesson plan where you can take what work you decide to do as your internship, but create it as something that an elementary school or middle school or high school student could do, then I'd be like, I would love a lesson plan that we could use at our site, and that would be sort of like their give and take. they're doing their work at our site, we're giving them the space, we're letting them use our electric, our water, brain power, or volunteers that they may need to get stuff done. In exchange, it would be great if we have something about your work that we can share with our students.
And I wanted to elaborate on that because in research methods tonight, we're going to go over to the Stavros Center for Education and Teacher Training to see Sustainability Superheroes. And one of the things is, as researchers, we know that we're either working for some industry or working for the state for positive economic outcomes, or we're working for education. And education is huge. So if our students are saying, how do I do a project? What project can I come up with? You've got a site and you've got an audience of kids where students can do research that can then turn into a teaching, into a lesson plan and benefit others. And it's so hard to find a location. We've only got your site, Land of Lakes, the Rosebud Continuum Sustainability Education Center, we've got Fat Peat Farm, we've got the city of Dunedin. But if any of you are looking for internship locations where you can use your creative prowess to say, well, my interest in research is this, where could I go and do this? It seems like you've got a perfect home there. If that is your goal, is to have lessons created for students and research.
Yeah, that is one of my, if I am the intern, what would I be, mentor, advisor, contact person over in Hollow Beach with the internship here, yes. That is in my, that's my, one of my requirements. You would do, in the end, you would do your project and your requirements for the university, but then you would, at the end, also do an oral presentation of the work that you did for the folks at our site, and then a lesson plan that we can use to teach whomever about the work that you did at our site. Because they may, students might see you around, or if you're there during summer camp, kids may even get to know who you are. I mean, some of the kids certainly know who Ashley is. So.
Yeah, and then my follow-up point was that even if you don't see in what's already being done, what you could do, as you showed, it once was just this field with these Tico towers in the background, this coal burning, and you had this vision and you created something. So there might be things you can add to that site that aren't there in the domain of your interest. It's just finding sites is hard.
It's a marine science site. So if it fits in with anything air, water, land, critters, dirt. I did say land.
Is there anything going on with food production based on halophytes, certain types of unexploited Florida native plants that the Seminoles may have gotten the fruits from, or gotten like cattails? I know for some Native American groups was a food supply that we've neglected.
I would have to say botany is like one area at our site that we don't really have that person. And so Stanley Crow is our site contact for the Tampa Electric Company. He works with their environmental and health group, and he's sort of the point person. If we have a question, or he comes to all of our operating meetings. His undergraduate degree is in botany, so anytime any of us have a plant-related question, that's what we go to. There's not any kind of agriculture program, no food service, anything, nothing. So that's wide open, if that's a thing. I learned like one edible plant so that when we are out on the marshes doing the fiddler crab lesson that we do, and we come across the sea loaf, it's like, hey, you guys want to eat something while you're out here? Like, if you're ever stuck, you can come over here and learn about this succulent plant. And then I have them all,
Is that portulaca?
It's the sea loaf. No, I don't know this one.
And you mentioned something about oyster shells that you're doing a project.
Oh yeah, that's another project. See, usually I'm rambling too much. I could talk forever, you know, it's sick of me. But, huh? What did you say?
I said that's true.
It is true. So we have another project going on our site. We just finished up, so we took some of the old kayaks that were no longer being used by the kids on the trail because they were just too heavy. And so we turned them into flower boxes. So we are working with restaurants. There's a volunteer who works for a consulting firm, one of those two consulting firms that I'm trying to get to work together on our berm erosion issue and living shoreline project. But we've been working with 2 restaurants in St. Petersburg who are saving all the oyster shells from the customers who come and order oysters for dinner, and then they throw them in the shell. The oyster shell is a very primo habitat that people were paying top dollar for, to put into shell bags and then using those shell bags to put back out into the Bay Area to restore habitats, to help create shorelines, to stop erosion issues from happening. And so the restaurants just put them in 5-gallon buckets in the back room in a cooler, and then this girl Sam goes and picks them up once a week, brings them over to Apollo Beach. She dumps them into our pile. The rule is she has to pick out all the cracker wrappers and all of the lemon rinds, because, you know, people have all their trash from at the end of dinner thrown in with it. And so, you know, we give her rubber gloves, and she picks out all the trash and hoses off the stuff to try and keep the smell down. And now we've been utilizing that oyster shell for the landscaping areas where those kayaks have gone. We're contemplating using it for some of the landscaping under the hedges, moving out to our front gate, so that we have examples of how you can use oyster shell in some ways maybe you didn't think about, rather than just throwing them away. And then others that are on the pile will actually be used for restoration projects out in the bay. So it's all recycling in ways that you may not think about. Oh, yeah, throw out the pH. Bring it in, crush the
Actually, went
oyster
through my
shell.
biodigesters, and once they started breaking down, they actually helped regulate the pH, so.
Yeah, all the calcium carbonate from the shell that we did base to add.
We had Philip Dixon, the engineering student that Rob introduced me to here at USF, whose family owned an oyster restaurant, was doing a biodigester study with engineering that's helped us get the Green Energy Fund project going here, but it was using crushed oyster shells to keep pH balanced in digesters and radically improve their surface area because of the crushed shell having places for microbes to live and acting as a pH buffer, which is essential for commercial operation. His results showed that they needed to be so well crushed that it exposed the internal calcium, because otherwise oysters protect themselves from degradation in seawater. There's a really big area for research here to follow up on the literature that he was contributing to in that program. We've got an ideal location and partner here for that, so I'm excited to hear.
We even have oyster shell.
Yeah. It's getting, when you do research, it's getting a location and getting materials to actually do the research that's really tough. And I suspect that a combination of the oyster shell in salt water, which is a good pH buffer itself, and the thermal capacity of this could really improve this and make it commercial, so we could have digesters along the coast. So if any of you are interested in following up with this research with Ashley, I'm way behind it.
Wait, so the previous research was in freshwater?
Yeah, all the research is in freshwater. This is the first one we know of that's doing saltwater, and I think it has so many implications. It needs people to really get into it.
They did saltwater that worked
Yeah.
before they had said saltwater just won't work. It's not producing methane. But they weren't using marine bacteria as a shit. And ta-da! Because I had to agree with Ashley. I was like, there's no way that's not going to work. Are you sure this is new and no one has thought of this? And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so I went back to the partners, and the partners were all on board, and so it happened.
I'm gonna throw out too, if you guys are interested in working at her site, Kathy was more excited about my project and the results of it than I was. So, if you want someone who's like very excited about what you do and can get behind it, and the you're scientific, she's like the best person to be like, yay!
I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd if you're older. I call myself a geek, so I guess I'm the next generation down. I don't know what you guys would call it today. Science is fun. And that's I have learned, so I didn't even talk about myself this time. So I come from 20 years of a research background here in the state of Florida. And prior to that, I was in North Carolina doing research for 3 years. I did 2 summer internships in Pennsylvania with a research focus. So I understand all of the patience and the perseverance that it takes to just really get through a scientific project. But now that I've switched over and I'm now helping to run and develop this new youth center, it's kind of fun because I can just like instill all the crazy stuff that I love into these young minds to get them excited about the science and the research. And they're out and they're using the scientific methods on their school field trips, and they're collecting data and they're analyzing the data and answering the questions that they came up with at the beginning of class. And it's like, guess what, guys? You just used the scientific method, did some simple mathematical calculations, you learned something, and it was fun. So it's very much hands-on and very applicable, because they're actually mimicking the techniques that actual field biologists in the state of Florida are using every day at their jobs. It's just maybe not at the exact same level of technical, specific, I don't know, that's the one. Can't say it. So it's there and it's options. Even summer camp counselor, you turn out you like kids next summer and you want to work at camp, you can apply to be a counselor. They don't pay you very much, but it gives you a break. Any other questions?
The application process for high school, how it works.
Yeah, there is a website link that I would send to you because the applications are online. It requires, the students have to get transcripts. They need 2 letters of recommendation for themselves. And then there are like a few questions that they have to sort of write answers to. And you submit it online. Usually the scholarships are advertised starting like in October. And then the deadline for the application is usually early to mid-February. They find out about the award in May, because like late April or early May, and then the internship would start. It's a summer internship. It's 8 weeks over summer, so like June, July.
So the deadline is just
The deadline for this year just closed, yeah. I know I had 2 students from Hillsborough County applied for that fisheries scholarship this year. So I usually put the word out to the school district to try and help spread the word within. It's an amazing opportunity, it really is. I mean, you guys are college kids. If you come to my site as an intern, I'll just tell you right now, it's not paid. I can't pay interns. But it's still an internship and it's on your resume and it can be for your coursework, so that's there. Okay? Am I gonna be fired because we were done early?
Actually, you're.
Oh no, look! I was like, oh no, look, see, I did ramble enough.
And then this is from the.
Aw, thank you.
Thank you.
It's really amazing that there's actually